Hello and welcome back to the Quarry garden. And you're probably wondering where I've been for the last 4 or 5 weeks. But I've been on holiday, and since I've come back, it's all about the hedging. And I'm still in the middle of it. Quite a few hedges left to do and a lot of other autumnal jobs. There's leaves everywhere now. We're really into autumn now, or fall as it's known elsewhere in the world. But today I thought I would start and add some plants, some ferns and Pulmonaria to the Stumpery. And you'll have seen earlier in the video, I started it a while ago. This year I've just pressed the pause button and I haven't really done anything down there. I think now is the time to catch up and actually add some plants. I want to actually move it on this year if at all possible. I did intend to gravel around the Stumpery, hopefully that'll happen soon in the autumn. But I'm up here in the woodland looking for interesting pieces of wood. don't have any tree stumps. I would love to have so many tree stumps in the Stumpery, but they're really hard to come by here in the UK unless you're willing to pay hundreds of pounds, which obviously I can't do. So I have to find interesting, gnarly old bits of wood that I can use, which look just as good as a tree stump. So let me show you what I found up here. I may not get them added today because I'm going to have to ask Mr. Quarry Gardener to help me move them because they're really heavy. But hopefully in the next few weeks I'll be able to get them down in the bottom of the quarry and you'll see the results. So let me show you what they look like. So this is the first piece of wood. It's obviously a limb off a tree, very old and gnarly, but should look good down in the bottom of the Stumpery. There's a rather large tree stump over there, but I've got no means of actually getting that moved. I don't have any equipment to do that, so I have to obviously try and move things in a very small tractor with a trailer on it. And this is the second piece, and I'm really looking forward to moving this one. I can just imagine it with ferns all the way around it, pretty much like what it has here, because up here in the woodland there's just all of our native ferns everywhere. So I'm pretty sure there may be more old, won't be tree stumps, but limbs in this section. It's a big mound. So hopefully if I just dig around I might find more interesting pieces of wood. That looks like there's a possibility there. But for now let's go down into the bottom of the quarry to the Stumpery and I'll show you the ferns that I've got to add today. So I've got 3 different types of ferns to add to the Stumpery today. First one is this Dryopteris, Christa the King, and this is a UK native, and I think it's native to the whole of Europe. And this is one of my favourite ferns to grow because it does so well in my garden. Evergreen in my climate, most years. If it does die back, it just shoots right back up the next year. Grows anything from 3 to 4 feet if it likes the conditions. And it certainly is one of my favourite ferns to grow in dry shade. That's Dryopteris, Christa the King. Second one is another UK native. Again, I think it's native to the whole of Europe. And that one is, let me just get the tag so I tell you the right name, Asplenium, otherwise known as the Hart's Tongue fern. And again, this one does really well in dry, full shade. I've got it in another position where it gets a lot more moisture and it seems to be coping there okay. But I think it does like to be in dry, partial to full shade. Again, another evergreen, and this one's got very shiny leaves. And I do like to use this, smaller versions of this in pots. They look really well with bedding over the winter. So that's Asplenium. Height-wise, anything up to about 2 feet. Spread about 18 inches to 2 feet. Not a huge fern, but a very pretty one. Did I say it was evergreen? Another evergreen one. Last but not least is the one I've never grown before. So I do need the actual tag for that one, and let me get that. And it is a polystachum. I think that's how you pronounce it. And you've guessed it, yes, in my climate it should stay evergreen. Now this is a smaller fern. This one grows anything from 18 inches to 2 feet, which is 60 to 70, 80 centimetres. Not a particularly large fern. Will stay evergreen in my climate, as I mentioned. And it's also known as the lace fern here in the UK, but I think elsewhere in the world it's possibly known as the tassel fern. And that's a fern from the Far East, from Japan. And I've got quite a few of those, so I've never grown those before. Likes partial to full sun, and it doesn't like to be in boggy ground, so it should be okay here in this woodland setting. But as I said, I've never grown it before, so fingers crossed it does okay. I've also got a couple of Pulmonaria, and this one is Raspberry Splash. Now that will need a little bit more sunshine, so sun to partial shade for that one. Likes to be kept quite moist, so I'll have to pick the right spot in the Stumpery for that. These are plants that I got, I think they were about £152 in the bargain section in the garden centre last year. I've had it in a pot for a year. It's just started to grow back. It'll be fine. It'll recover once it's in the ground. And another bargain plant. This one again, I think was only £1. This one is a Tiarella, pink skyrocket. It's not the best specimen, but it will recover once it's been in the ground for a year. So yeah, I've got quite a few to add. So let me place them around, see what they look like, and then we'll add them. Now this is what we affectionately call the crocodile, because that's what it reminds us of. And at the back here, I've got a couple of our native ferns, which I've already cut back. So they will grow over the top for next year. But I think what I'll do is add one of these Dryopteris around about there. And the other one to the front, because these are evergreen, it'll give some sort of structure to the front of the Stumpery, because this one here is one of our native ferns and that one will die back. It'll regrow next year. So round about there. So I think that's those two. So I think I'll add these Hort's tongue fern, the Asperlenium, around this little section of tree stumps or tree limbs. I think they will look quite nice. Something like that. They'll not grow too tall so they won't hide the wood. The Pulmonarias I think will look really good because they're low growing around about there. And I have a native fern at the back which will grow over the top. And then the Philostachys, well, I keep saying Philostachys, Polystachum, don't know where I get that from, Polystachum. I'm going to add those around these bits of tree limb, something like that. So I've already roughly dug around this section just to make sure that I wasn't coming across any large sections of sandstone, because even though this is right down the base of the quarry, the flattest point, where all of the sandstone would have been removed over 200 years ago, every now and again I come across quite big slabs of it. So far so good, haven't hit any here. I'm not going to add any additional compost, the soil's quite nice, probably all up the leaves over the years, but I have got some leaf mould from last winter. Hasn't quite broken down yet, but ferns won't mind. They love that type of material added to the base of the planting hole. And I've got some landscape bark which I'll dress the top with. And why do I add them this time of year? Obviously it depends on your climate. For me, I like to add things this time of year, particularly ferns, because it rains every other day and I don't have to water them. Whereas if you added them earlier in the year, can get some dry spells. This time of year is ideal for me. Obviously if you're adding plants, perennials, anything like that, you'd have to obviously decide when is the best time for your own planting conditions, your own climate. So let me put you on a time lapse and let's add them. The next day, didn't get a chance to finish, hadn't realised how quickly it gets dark now. So I've still got to add the Dryopteris round about this section here, and also the Tiarella, which I've got to go in front of the section of tree trunk. So that'll have to be on another day. But I'd just like to say thanks for watching, and for all those who stuck with me for not being around for the last 5 weeks, and I'll see you soon.